me to be here partly because of my disabled status, and so I'm glad that you are all here. I got in a car accident while working, have herniated discs in my neck and my lower back, and I have nerve pain throughout my whole body. So I'm not here 24/7. I'm here for a few hours a day. Not every day. Sometimes my pain's so overwhelming I just can't make it, but I think it's really important that we have better services for the disabled population. That's not the only reason why I'm here, though. I'm really upset about a lot of issues we have in our society.
The Thornbirds.
Yeah, girl.
Movie of all time.
If you're an 80s baby, you know what that movie is.
Technically, it was a mini-series.
So I'm a loud, proud woman with a disability, and my color, I see a lot of browns.
All right. Name something that you like to eat.
Uh-oh. Let's hear that one. I want to hear that one.
I can name all of them.
I bet you could.
Well, I'm an Italian, so I love Italian food. Good, real, authentic Italian food.
If it was one Italian dish, what would it be?
Lasagna.
Right. Well, name your favorite movie of all time.
Top Gun.
Top Gun.
I love Top Gun.
We all asked for the wonderful occupiers here. We're with the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, and we have been supporting you from afar, providing copies and doing stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
We wanted to actually physically come down here and show you our love, show you our support, and do just a little mini teach-in on disability justice and sort of what we do and why what you're doing is important to us. Share a little bit about that and learn more about how we can support you better.
As an occupier, my name is George Blackcrow Daly. As an that's my given Native American name, Blackcrow. As an occupier for 8 days now, where we're lacking is voices on the corner. Volunteering a couple hours, and even 10 minutes, just standing there holding a sign, taking a sign off the pallets over here, holding one up, saying what comes to your mind.
There's another way that you could support by actually becoming involved. Like one of the things, have you been to our General Assembly?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a General Assembly which is where we vote by consensus. So everybody has to agree on the decision of things moving forward. But what gets put forward in consensus is usually decided by groups. And those groups are committees that they work on finance, education, which is what I'm on, the video collective. We're like the people who do the work. But then we also have other other smaller groups called work groups. Or solidarity groups, and they take up very particular issues. So you can imagine, like in, I think Oakland and Occupy Wall Street, they have like a people of color working group. So they work to bring their voices, their concerns in to help shape how this movement goes forward. So one thing to envision for you guys to participate very actively is to think about maybe coming in, learning how our assembly works, and seeing if you can envision yourselves becoming part of some of these things.
For inclusion. So these are some of the issues that they're struggling with around the country. Like, how do you make general meetings, assemblies accessible, the voting process, to people who are blind, who can't see, hands?
Yeah, clearly this toolkit is geared toward larger occupation sites like Oakland. I don't see, you're not going to have a huge problem maintaining a 36-inch wide traffic path for a wheelchair user in this. One of the advantages of being also less likely to be rated is another. But we had a disability action brigade. I don't know if any of you have heard of the group Quito or of the Arnieville protest that happened last year in Berkeley. Yeah, Arnieville was sort of like a prefiguring of the Occupy movement. A number of people, disability activists as well as homeless activists, basically occupied a traffic island in South Berkeley that has a history going all the way back to the 60s of being the scene for movements like this. And they stayed there for over a month. Many of them sleeping overnight, perhaps most of them. So many of those, the group is still around. It's called QUIDO, Communities United in Defense of Olmsted. Olmsted being the Supreme Court decision that grants people with disabilities the civil right to live in the community, not in nursing homes. And they organized the Disability Action Brigade. We met up at the near the northern tip of Oscar Grant Plaza, which is what we're now calling former Frank Ogawa Plaza in downtown Oakland. And then we went over to the nearby state building a block away to do a teach-in. However, they were having none of it. Their state building is not at all like ours a few blocks down here. Theirs has a detachment of CHP officers at the ready to pull the doors shut on us and deny us entrance to what is, after all, our building. But we just decided we did a little. This was my first exposure to any of this emerging culture within the Occupy movement, the hand signals, the mic checks, and so on. We arrived at a consensus there are two entrances to this building. We basically walk right through a rotunda area, just like we did to get there. To have half the group go around and blockade the other entrance. So, people supposedly weren't getting in or out, although they did. Sarah Rapp, as a rapper, she is known as the RED, Rapping Executive Director. She rapped in Oakland and did not get booed or have anything thrown at her. This is
Oh my God.
So that was it. A few people from our group went on and blockaded the port of Oakland that evening. We did not. Sarah had to get back to feed her 7-month-old daughter. Leonie, who we dearly love, she used to come in the office more frequently. I mean, that's pretty much it. We had a little snafu that they were unable to get hold of a sign language interpreter, even for that large event. I understand that at some of the other occupations, I know someone who was at Occupy Boston, and she said that to the extent that there even were any interpreters, they were like first-year students who were not very good. That's not good, especially when you consider that the hand signals, the point, and the sparkly hands and all are sort of like the movement's very own sign language. I actually mused online why we don't just use American Sign Language, which already has dictionaries and teachers and lots of stuff.
We also wanted to share with you guys a little bit about people with disabilities and how we are not unfamiliar with occupations history. Mark, did you want to share that, or do you want to?
Right, I already mentioned Arnieville, but the earlier one had to do with the Section 504 sit-ins in 1977. Section 504, the Federal Rehabilitation Act, was was a step on the way to the Americans with Disabilities Act, which I'm sure we'll get to later. It gave people with disabilities the right to benefit from any federally funded program, which is lots of them, colleges, universities, that sort of thing. Only, before a law can really take effect, there have to be regulations written to implement it. And what was then the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Today it's the Department of Human Services, you stupid boss. Health and Human Services. Just drag their feet and refuse to write the regulations. Well, the disability movement, which had already hit full steam by that time, and existed for a better part of a decade at this point, got fed up. So what they did was they occupied the federal building in San Francisco for nearly a month until the regulations got written. A little known fact, even within the disability community, something I only learned when I was researching this for our disability history event last month. The Black Panther Party helped out the 504 sit-in. There was a particular Black Panther, his name was Brad Lomax, who had a disability. He got the Panthers to come and bring food in there. For whatever reason, this is just not something that gets talked about much, even within our movement. Maybe it makes us seem too scary and radical.
And I think that still stands, right?
Yeah, the record for an observation of the federal office building. Yeah, the record for the longest demonstration by people with disabilities now belongs to Arnieville. Yes, you had a handout?
No.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think just to add on to what Mark is saying, I mean, the Disability Rights Committee has a long history of this type of activism. You know, he mentioned the 504 sit-in. There was the takeover at Gallaudet University, where the students there demanded they have a deaf president.
Adapt
does, seasonal rallies, campaign causes for Medicare, Medi-Cal, and, community-based living. So, I think it's important for the disabled community to be proud and remind ourselves that we have this history, and then take it out to the non-disabled population and, educate on things, skills, and history that we already really have. And unfortunately, I think what you're seeing when we're having this coming together of these two communities, you're still seeing these remnants of prejudice and discrimination in terms of I had a friend who got kind of caught up in the Harvard. He goes to Harvard Divinity School, and they had an Occupy protest there, and he was stuck between the library and the police, and he ended up being able to let go. He got to go back to his dorm, but some of his friends stayed in the movement, and he's a little person and he uses a scooter, and they were like, oh, Bill, even if you had stayed, the demonstration was not accessible for you, because they went up stair ramps and they went, stairwells and a lot of, inaccessible places. And it left him to think, is the right to protest and assert your democracy really only for able-bodied people? And I think that really deserves some, harsh critical analysis on both sides for there to be a real unification moving forward.
Anybody else want to share why the Occupy movement is important for people with disabilities?
Social Security.
Yeah. Social Security.
SSDI.
It's because we are all the 99%. Sarah mentioned Justin Dart, who is considered to be the father of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Some of you old-timers may have heard the name Justin Dart in reference to his father. His father was a wealthy industrialist who was part of President Reagan's so-called kitchen cabinet. Justin came from the 1%. But since he had polio and used a wheelchair, he was oppressed too. He instantly became one of us. And he tirelessly crusaded for justice for people with disabilities. Finally got the ADA passed. He is a revered figure, second only to Ed Roberts in our entire movement. We had a giant puppet of Justin with his big cowboy hat. He was from Houston, Texas, at our parade in July, which we're having again in July, and we hope you'll all come out for that. But yeah, merely the fact of being a person with a disability instantly makes you the 99%.
What amazes me is there was like a $15 cut in Social Security, and they were talking about how we're not going to touch it, we're not going to do anything with it. But there was like a sudden cut of $15, and maybe to some people that may be nothing, that may be chump change, but to me, that may be 2 days worth of meals I'm going to lose, or bus fare.
Yeah, but were there limits
that's
to
the
things?
world. That's the world to me.
So, on the vibe, so to speak, but kind of touching on what, I'm sorry, what was your name again? Jose. What he was saying about, you know, taking care of each other, I think it's going to be so important because if you look at what's happening in Europe right now, those countries that are going bankrupt are passing austerity measures that are by and large the people are being ignored. And that's why there is real rioting, real people, real violence, real death. And I think, unfortunately, in 10, 20, 30 years, those same austerity measures will be passed here in the United States if we do not, unfortunately, and you can say what you want about voting, but I'm not going to force people to help themselves, but I hope everybody here is a registered voter, exercises your right to vote, because in addition to taking care of ourselves, we have to go to the ballot box. The only way, I believe, real change will happen is when we elect representatives who act in our interest, and that they get the message of what our needs are. And if that doesn't happen, we can have all the peace rallies and all the, encampments and everything we want, but there will still be drastic cuts and people, it's not even like you can say it's going to go back like to the Depression days, because the world has changed so much, and the gap between the poor and the rich has changed so much. I fear for, to me that's a real doomsday situation. So that's my little way to say, don't forget to vote.
All right, there has been talk of the Occupy movement running its own candidates. I'm not sure for what office. I'd like to see that happen in safe districts so that that doesn't become a spoiler and help the Republicans win.
Or within the Democrat.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I'll say I'm a registered Democrat, but, I feel that there's corruption on both sides. I think that Washington has a huge dollar sign on it, and unfortunately, people do not go there to serve anymore. They go to get rich. And then once they're done in office, they stay to get more rich.
They rob right to the lobbying
Exactly,
firms.
they become professional lobbyists.
One of the last year said that the corporation now has freedom of speech to buy whatever politician, whatever prostitute it wants to, and put those candidates up there and buy, exactly what you're saying is really important. Every one of our votes is worth estimated $23 per congressman here in the state of California to be elected. The almighty dollar is what, runs the society right now. If we're registered to vote, each one of us here represents $23, the various numbers of city councilmen, congressmen, senators, etc. We have a duty to go out there and register to vote and exercise our vote. One of the guys just now today was talking to Owen and myself, and he was saying, hey, in Boulder, Colorado, they elected a city ordinance. They wrote one in saying that corporations don't have the same rights as natural human beings. It only makes sense. What did George Washington and all our and the people go to the revolution for? It wasn't the right to expand from the Magna Carta. The nobles have rights not to be killed. The pharaoh doesn't have the right to kill us. We as human beings have the right to freedom of speech and to be, be represented. It's not created for corporations to do. Since the 14th Amendment was inaugurated during the Civil War, corporations have expanded their rights much more, or at least attempted to, in the judicial system, more so than natural human beings. That's not correct. We should go out there, and that's part of the disabled issue. What we need is more issues like that, and on the local level, we get our people elected. At the local level, who's representing the disabled, who's representing the minorities, who's representing the human beings, and not the corporations.
I'll believe corporations and people when Texas executes one. And I'll have you know this whole notion of corporate personhood began right here. We had a Supreme Court case in Southern Pacific Railroad versus Santa Clara County. Some law clerk wrote down this notion that corporations have the same rights as a person in a marginal note. It wasn't even in the actual decision, and courts have been following that as decided case law ever since.
And those of us who are disabled, homeless, who don't have that education, who don't desire to think outside the box, we stay in the box called Pandora's box. And in Greek it's called takers of gifts. They think because we're disabled, we have no gifts. We say to them, they're alive. We're human beings and we can think outside the box. They need us. They need us to stay in the dark. I'll share with you guys, let's get together and turn the light on. That's all. No more pity parties of, oh, you can't do this. We have the power to create something. Say, okay, you want to be corporations? If we can incorporate what is humane, integrity, and moral standards that is healthy for the whole. And while they be pushed out, knock on our door and say, hey, hold up. Our value can drop even more because we don't want your dollar down. We're saying we want a different system that works as a whole and has a higher value than the dollar. And we created the dollar. That's not against our government to put a higher value on the dollar. That's not illegal. It's within our constitutional right. Because our face, one of its purpose means united, one people, one public. It's on the money. When we exclude ourselves by putting our ability to think for ourselves as a whole for a common goal, and say, okay, we understand that we want to be treated like babies, or do we want to be treated like thinking, productive, with integrity, human beings. It just so happens that we're going to love them. That's all. Thank you, man. I just want to share that information.
I would say most people have given up, you know, and that's what Occupy is showing, that you can make a difference.
Correct.
And the issues which hit at least 50% of the country that are like corporations and not people, or look at the bailouts for the banks. Those are the issues we need to keep putting out there. Because those, you know, if you can show more, get to where people are pissed off, and showing that people can make a difference if they do something, then people aren't just going to stay home. They're actually going to vote, or they're actually going to get out.
What's exciting me about the Occupy movement is that it's not our issues anymore. You know, like identity politics. It's like all of us together are impacted by this country's economic policies. I lost a house to a short sale. I have to pay over $30,000 in child care, and I can only write off $600 of that on my taxes. So we have a tax bill that is just humongous. And I'm watching while these corporations, you know, they get money back, and I'm sitting here having to pay.
They don't even have to pay taxes. That's what astounds me.
And as the state of California, for those of you who don't know, just went to the Supreme Court and asked for permission to cut in-home supportive services for people with disabilities by $600 million. And guess what the court said?
Sure, why not?
Sure.
And CMS, the Centers for Medicaid Services, said, yep, you can do this.
Yeah, there's movement on that. They actually agreed to a moratorium on implementing that until another hearing on December 19th, so stay tuned.
So as of December 15th, though, they're supposed to, I guess there's a moratorium, but they're supposed to be, they're going to make these cuts and people are going to be hurt. And, you know, so we're coming to say, wait a minute, no, there is enough money. There is enough money. Our taxes are a mirror of our values. Yes. And is this what we value? Do we value people or do we value things? And you know, the great leader of the disability movement, Justin Dart, right before he died, he said, I adamantly protest the richest culture in the history of the world that is incarcerating people with disabilities in nursing homes and institutions for lack of community supports and services. So we can't. So for me, what you all are doing is so important because it impacts me personally, it impacts me as a woman with a disability, and so I just